Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Career Expert Roundtable. I am Bill, the company's expert, and with me is Abby from Life Work Balance. Hello, Abby. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing well. I'm excited to try something new today. We're going to be talking about some of these more current events topics. And if you have any current event topics that have come up for you or that you're aware of that you would like our insight or maybe advice on, put it in the chat. But we've got a couple of things already prepared so that we can share our insights with you today.
Yes, exactly. This is going out live to a couple of different locations. So if you see this, you should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of the feed. Get in the chat. Let us know your reaction or any questions you have, and we're going to go from there. The topic for today's episode is the end of remote work, hiring trends and news. So let's jump into that. This was precipitated by an announcement, as I understand, from Amazon like a little while ago, but it's creating some ripples throughout the world of work. And before I launch with any articles, Abby, what's your 2 cents on this?
Yes. So Amazon recently announced that they were going to have a mandatory return to work occur, which means that people would be going from remote back to in person. Now, I'm think that there's probably still some wiggle room with hybrid opportunities and things like that, but they're going to reduce the amount of like truly remote workers and ask them to come into the office. And so my gut reaction to this, my instinctual reaction was, holy cow, what are they doing? It is kind of one of those things that I think organizations probably see more efficiency and effectiveness when it comes to in-office work versus remote work. At the same time, when it comes to your employee well-being and happiness and people's, dedication to a company, I think taking away remote work can really impact an organization's effectiveness overall. How about you,
Yeah,
Bill?
and this is mainly for knowledge workers, right? I mean, that's the only real class of employees this would affect, right? I don't think there's any other types of workers that this would be applicable, right? Is that your understanding, Abby?
Yes.
Okay. And this started like during COVID, right? This was basically, one of the measures taken to try and mitigate COVID, where a lot of jobs they transitioned to being remote jobs. So instead of working at the office at your computer and your phone, you just did the same thing from home. And I remember thinking, there's a lot of knowledge workers, there's a lot of jobs that could be remote work. I remember thinking this like 10 years ago, but for some reason, they don't allow that. And the conclusion I came to was because managers just don't trust employees that they're going to be working, and they want to keep tabs on them. And that's why they force everyone to commute and come in just so that you can work at a computer and a phone, under the manager's thumb, basically, right? That's, so they can observe what you're doing.
Yeah.
So they reluctantly went to it. And, I think everybody was hoping that this would create a more permanent change where everybody would realize that, okay, you can have your employees working remotely. It's okay. They don't have to be, right within visual range of the boss at all times to ensure that they're actually doing their job. But it's kind of unfortunate that we seem to be going back. And as far as I'm concerned, we're going backwards, to, no, you must commute, even when it doesn't make any technical sense for you to do so.
Yes. And there are certainly jobs out there where remote work does not make sense. When you look at first responders, if I were to have a paramedic need to come to my home to assist with the medical emergency, it would not make any sense if they were working remote because they wouldn't be able to assess the situation, drive me to the emergency room, things like that. Health workers sometimes, if we've got doctors and nurses and people who are working in hospitals, it doesn't make sense for those types of essential workers to be remote. I also think that it could be a great opportunity to maybe give them some remote time to work on, notes and paperwork and things like that. So there are certainly jobs that do not make sense when it comes to remote work. I don't know every, job aspect when it comes to Amazon. And it seems like, based off of my limited knowledge of what different types of jobs they have at this type of organization, that probably a high percentage of them could have some remote aspect.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the fact that they've made an announcement that says it goes across the board, every department, every type of job at every level, That to me, that signals the fact that it's not a matter of the criteria that doesn't take into account the nature of the individual jobs. It's a matter of policy. They want all their employees in, regardless of what you do, as a matter of policy. And the only valid thing that I could come up with on that would make sense on why they would do this, what the reasoning was, is if you had issues between some employees that were like doing the same job, yet some could work remotely, yet others couldn't or chose not to. It would create a new type of distinction that hasn't existed before, and they might have some issues with that. And they can't use the excuse of, well, it's emergency measures anymore. It just that doesn't fly. So I would vote for the trust factor. It's like they just want people in. They don't trust the people are going to be putting in a full day when you can't see them. And so that's what I would say.
Who wants to work for an organization that doesn't trust you? Like when it comes to overall employee engagement and happiness in the workplace, there's this like mutual agreement between the employees and the organization that I'm going to trust you to do your job from an employer perspective. And the employees are going to say, I'm going to trust you to assign me the, appropriate types of work. I'm going to trust that you're going to pay me livable wages and cover things like this. So there's like this mutual agreement that occurs that's maybe unsaid between organizations and the employees. But when that trust starts to falter in either direction, that's where these sorts of things start to happen. So I'm sure there have been some people who have taken advantage of the remote work policies, and maybe that's kind of what has initiated this type of change and pull back into the office.
Yeah, there's no way to monitor, there's no way to enforce. It's just that simple. At the end of the day, when people aren't physically there, you could go through all kinds of elaborate technical solutions. You could do it, but at the end of the day, I think it would be more trouble to administer those than it would be to just have someone physically, like just outside your office, so you could talk to them or you could see what they're doing, right?
Right.
Appearances are important, and it exposes the reality that managers don't really know the capacity of work for a lot of their employees, especially knowledge workers. If you have an employee that's producing 145 work orders a day, and they come to you saying, well, I'm really maxed out here. You really don't know if that's true or that's an exaggeration. And I've been on the other side of that, so I kind of know some of the challenges there. And I've also had that been taken advantage of with that kind of stuff. So the only way is to sort of see people. It's silly, but it's true. I'm going to bring up an article. We've got some activity happening in the chat, and that's great. And we're going to go to that in a second. But I just want to bring up an article that I do have that's on this topic. Okay, very short. Let's see if I can get this to work here. Okay, I'm just going to read this. It's from LinkedIn, obviously. So it's one paragraph. It says, when RTO, return to the office, isn't actually mandatory. More than 4 years out from pandemic lockdowns, about 80% of companies have returned to office policies. But only 17% of those actually have some kind of enforcement. According to a report by the commercial real estate company CBRE, whoever they are, employers are using carrots as well as sticks to try to increase office attendance as tensions persist with employees who've grown accustomed to working from home. More than 1/3 of workers say they go in only 1 or 2 days a week, while a vast majority of employers are not satisfied with that in-office presence. So yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's going to be very hard, in my opinion, to get this back, because once the cat's out of the bag, like employees are now treating this. You can tell me more precisely, Abby, but my impression is employees are regarding remote work as much more of a standard thing and a standard expectation now. So trying to tell them that, no, we don't offer that, you're going to be at a considerable disadvantage trying to attract talent when you're having that policy in place.
Absolutely. And there are people out there who would much prefer the in-office work, just based on personality style and, age and stage and all of those different things that can come into factors when it comes to who you are as an individual. And creating this like blanket requirement starts to alienate someone. So for sure, there are people out there who want to work in office, and research has started to show that younger generations, particularly the Generation Z generation is looking for flexibility. And I would say a lot of the other generations in the workplace also value flexibility, but in particular, Gen Z, which is soon to be one of the primary generations in the workplace, see that as like one of the number one values. And if there is no flexibility, if there is not an option for remote work, then that's when they start to say, no, thanks, I'm going to look elsewhere.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, the previous generations, they grew up with this, I'll go ahead and say, this stupidity in place. Like, if you don't need to be in the office, if say you're an accountant or something, or something where all your data is all presented on the computer and then you process it in some way, submit reports, you're a pure knowledge worker, you don't have to be in the office in the first place. And it doesn't make any sense. So previous generations, like the boomers or the Gen X or whatever, they're just used to being forced to go to the office. So they have less of a problem with it because they've been forced to do that for many years. The new group coming in, the new sort of cohort of employees joining the workforce, they're not used to that. And so I think it's natural that they're, questioning, like, well, why do I have to go into the office if I could do everything from home and I don't have commute time or expenses doing that? Like, what's the purpose,
Yes. Well, and I think just generations in the workplace is a really interesting conversation to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, at this time, 5 generations in the workplace, which is the most that has ever been in the workplace at one time. Generation Alpha, which is the generation that was born 2013 to 2024-ish. They're not old enough to join the workplace yet, but we're about to see them start to.
Well, that might change.
I know.
Let's put them to work. They're what, 1 year old right now? Yeah.
Our 11-year-olds are about to get in the workplace.
Well, we're thinking ahead.
But they're starting to look into joining the workforce. In the United States, you have to be about 14 to legally work in the United States. So we've got 3 years before they start to join into maybe some of those more entry-level customer service jobs. They might do internships in high school. And so there's all of these different generations that are currently present in the workplace.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So 5, which is the most ever. We've got all the way up to like the traditionalists who are in their 80s and getting into their 90s even when it comes to what they're expecting in the workplace. So their experience of work is very different from Gen Z and soon to be Gen Alpha coming into the workplace. And so expectations are different. They are.
So, okay, question for the chat. If you have to book a flight or something, like one of those customer service jobs, would you rather talk to a 5-year-old or a 98-year-old? Let me know. Yeah, because I don't know. It could be even money there, what you're going to get.
I got to say, I have a 3-year-old, and the way that he can manipulate things on my phone that I did not know existed blows my mind. So my grandfather also today is his birthday. He's turning 92 years old. He can also access lots of crazy things on devices. So it could be a very similar experience.
Well, if you put the 5-year-old or the 3-year-old with AI, that muddies the waters because 3-year-old plus AI, maybe they solve all the world's problems. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay, so coming back to the whole return to office remote work thing, here's something I want to throw out. Okay, now let's pretend that you're working in an organization that allows remote work. There's not a lot of stigma around it, so some people can work remotely if their duties permit. Now, what my prediction is that the employees who choose to have a presence in the office more than others, I think they're going to see a lot of advantages in that. They're going to be viewed as working harder, more keen. They're going to have a closer affinity with their boss. Most likely, they're more likely to be promoted into any opportunities because they're seen as, all those positive things, and they'll have an edge on their coworkers that are working remotely. What would you say to that?
I would completely agree. And this is where that really objective versus subjective experience comes in from an employment perspective. So we ideally have no bias. We treat people equally, or not equally, but equitably. We interact with each person without having these kind of subconscious things driving our behavior with them. But that's not the way the world works. So there will likely be perceptions connected to the people who choose to come into the office versus people who choose to be remote, and people who choose to be hybrid. And I think you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to how these perceptions will impact the workers who choose in office versus remote work when there's an option. I think
Yeah,
from a
that's my prediction. Yeah.
yeah, from a cultural perspective, like an organizational cultural perspective, if everyone is on the same page that we're excited to come into the office, we have higher rates of collaboration, we can get things done faster because we can like brainstorm in real time rather than waiting for someone to respond to an email and another person to respond to the email. I think that if the organization as a whole and all the employees buy into that, that's great. But if you have that one person who's like, no, I need to be remote. Maybe I live far away from the office. My commute time is much larger. Maybe I have a, responsibility that makes it a little bit harder for me to be in the office, like childcare or elder care. Maybe I have medical issues. There are things that could also play into that. There will be a perception of how those who play into what the organization is thinking to
Yeah.
kind of those outliers.
Yeah, I agree. It's for the boss to get a quick answer. It's always easier when someone's right outside your door just to like, hey, ask a question, or to see them working all the time. There's just a psychological perspective. If they need a little thing done, it's easier to once again just give it to somebody right out the door rather than get a teleconferencing solution up, or you don't know whether that person is by their phone at that exact moment, or it's just always going to be easier. No matter how easy you make it, it's always going to be easier to talk to somebody in person if they're right there near you physically, right? I think that's always going to have an edge, and the perceptions are going to be there. So what I would infer from this is that if you're looking for a job and there's an employer that does allow remote work for your position, but doesn't insist upon it, if you want to be in the office 5 days a week or whatever, there may be some opportunities if they offer remote work and you choose not to take it. You prefer to not mix your home life and your work life together, and you choose to be in close proximity to the boss. There may be some advantages there, like there usually are. There always has been for employees who are closer to their boss. That's just how things usually go. So that's my prediction.
Yes, and I think that in-person work will never go away. There's always going to be in-person jobs.
Oh, definitely.
Recognizing how you as an individual choose to interact with the in-person opportunities versus remote opportunities is really going to also play a role in how successful you are when it comes to building relationships, working with people, promoting, all of those things. So if you are someone like me who would prefer the remote work, but also willing to go in the office occasionally, you'll have to be very intentional about how you build those relationships and how you communicate and how you partner with people. I think one of the things that is also kind of somewhat interesting about this entire conversation is my kind of feeling that is like the root cause of this is actually lack of communication. There's probably something systemic that's going on in these organizations that are mandating this return to work relating to lack of communication around expectations.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Performance, all of these things. And it's unfortunate that these kind of mass mandates have to be made that impact significant quality of life, essentially, because we're not really willing to have the hard conversations. And I think that's what makes a really good manager and a really good leader is someone who is able to have those difficult conversations in a very compassionate yet direct way. So if I have that one employee who's definitely taking advantage of working remote, is not meeting expectations and is not, completing their performance goals, instead of kind of punishing my entire team, I need to have the courage to have that hard conversation with that one employee rather than ruining it for everyone.
Yeah, the opposite of what Amazon's doing on a systemic level. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I also think that when it comes to remote work, having some flexibility is okay. So if I have like a mandatory return to office policy and we've got data based off of our specific organization regarding outcomes and goals and all of those things, having some flexibility too is okay. Even though we might be all in the office, maybe we still have one day where we're working remote or where we don't actually have set start times and end times, where people can, as long as they come into the office and they're involved in some of these meetings, like sometimes, then there are also times when they might be able to work remotely. So having some flexibility always makes it a much easier pill to swallow for everyone rather than these really rigid policies that allow for no wiggle room or flexibility.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go over to the chat briefly. So Parag is here. Welcome to Parag. Luigi says the best collab. Well, thank you, Luigi. That's high praise. Oh no, my job that I'm doing a hiring manager interview tomorrow for a remote job. Okay.
Yep. So tomorrow they've got an interview with a hiring manager for a remote job.
Okay, gotcha.
And I responded in the chat. Don't know if you saw that, Luigi, but I said, congrats on your interview. Wondering if you had any specific concerns while you prepare for that interview, because right now you got 2 experts who can help you with that preparation process.
Luigi says, hi, Bill. Luigi, spell my name with a lowercase b. That's a mortal insult in Canada, just so everybody knows. The gain on your microphone is a bit high. You might want to lower it a bit. I can't. StreamYard, this solution here, it does everything for you automatically, so you can't adjust anything. That's why I'm using this microphone, because the last one, I could not adjust the treble. It was too dull sounding, so I put this one in because this is a little bit brighter. But now it's too loud, you say. I don't know if Abby, if you want to get closer to your mic or just talk directly into it, and then we'll be evenly matched.
Yes,
we have a debate. Yeah. Well, thanks for the feedback, Luigi. I appreciate it. And yes, if you guys have any comments on anything we're talking about, you have your own take on it, or you have a story to tell about it, or you have a question about it, feel free to get in the chat. This is being streamed. It's going out in a couple of different locations. So wherever you're watching this from, my channel, Abby's channel, wherever, let me know what you guys are wondering, and we will respond.
And I actually have a personal experience when it comes to mandated return to work policies. So I worked for an organization where we were all in person in the office, but our specific department allowed people to work from home 1 day a week. And it was actually where it was one person from the team could work from home 1 day a week. So there were never multiple people from a team out of the office working from home on the same day. So we had it where we would rotate. Let's just say my day was Wednesdays, one of my coworkers' day was Thursday, and the other one was Friday. And so that was the same day for each of us each week. And we would ensure that there was coverage. And it was actually the most productive day because we were able to sit down at home in a quiet environment. This was also pre-COVID when everyone was in school and everyone else was in the office. But it was a very quiet environment where you could just crank through your pile of administrative work. Well, one of the things that ended up happening was I think someone was abusing that policy and wasn't present at their computer and was running errands in the middle of the day, which I have opinions on it, that's also okay. But anywho, someone was abusing the policy. And then without warning, the administration took away that ability to work from home 1 day a week without warning. They were as of next Monday, no one's working from home. And it caused significant ripples in the organization. I would say there was probably a turnover, as a result of this specific policy change. Probably 70% of the employees chose to start searching for new jobs immediately.
Wow. Let me guess. This is a company that has more than 500 employees, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that would be my guess, because that's how
maybe the third or fourth largest employer in the state that I'm located in.
Okay, yeah, that's consistent. This is a large organization behavior where they don't trust their employees. That's why they always want to see your employees. If you are in a smaller business, what's interesting about smaller business, say you have 50 employees, you have to trust your employees more because you can't stand over them. You will have employees out doing things. Some of them might stay in a building or whatever where you can maybe supervise them. You can visually see them. They're in an office or they're in a workshop or something, but you will invariably have salespeople or whatever out doing stuff remotely, and you can't supervise those employees. They're mobile. They're not remote, but they're mobile. So once again, you have the people in the shop that have to work diligently, and when it's not a break, they have to be at their workstation. Whereas you have somebody driving a truck somewhere with their smartphone and they're in contact, but then they make a stop at the bank and stop to get a couple of groceries and this kind of stuff during work hours, right? And there's no way to verify that. You can't stand over them. So the culture usually adapts to, you just have to trust these people, and whereas large organizations, they don't. So that's why they would adopt a solution like the one you just described for it. Yeah.
Well,
But
and I think
yeah,
that,
I can see. I can. Sorry to interrupt. I was saying I could see you like with it one day a week or something to work at home. That's the day that you can get on with stuff without constant interruptions or the phone ringing or something, and then you can just focus on these manual tasks or something.
yeah,
It sounds like really useful. It helps you plan. You know.
and it was a very like high administrative load job. And
Mm.
so if you didn't have this one day to really focus for 8 hours on catching up on emails, finishing reports and paperwork and things like that, it just would continue to build and build and build. And then you were constantly behind. And I think many of the
Yeah.
people who were in our department specifically were high performers and high achievers and like wanted to tick things off their to-do list and didn't like, holding stuff over from one week to the next. And so it was it caused a revolt ultimately within the department where, like I said, 70% of people immediately started looking for new jobs.
Yeah, and this could be an effect of Amazon and other organizations, their efforts to rein in the remote work, because I think if I had to predict, I'd say a lot of employees are going to react in a very similar way. They're not going to be interested. They will require a compensation premium to require them to work in office all the time.
Yes.
I think it's a shift in expectations from the workforce.
Yep.
And while some people may not be able to get away with that, other talented, in-demand employees will be able to. And I think it's going to be really interesting seeing how this is going to play out.
Yes. Well, and there was an interesting comment that came through the chat from Oceania, I believe. And they said that if you only want remote work, should it be on your resume on Indeed? And I think I don't use Indeed for applying, but there might be a application, like a general application where you can click that you're only interested in remote work. I think you can certainly do that. When it comes to creating your document that you have indicating that you're only open to remote work, I think could harm you because I think it could show lack of flexibility and all of those things. I would recommend that if you are interested in remote only work, that those are the only jobs that you apply to. And then it's kind of that unsaid expectation that it's going to be remote only. So I don't think you should explicitly say that you're only open to remote work on your Microsoft Word document or Google Docs resume. But if there's an option on the Indeed resume to check a box that says you're looking for remote only, that might be more on the recruiter perspective where they're looking for people who are remote only.
Yeah, I agree. Possibly for a slightly different reason. I agree with what you said, but I would take an attitude, just a blanket approach of not putting anything on your resume that artificially limits you. Yep. For example, if there's a job and it doesn't specify whether it's remote or not, you want to put yourself forward for it. Go to the interviews, have them fall in love with you, maybe even get so far as they make you an offer. And then at that point, you can state explicitly, I only do remote work. And then it's painful for them to refuse you at that point. So, maybe it goes nowhere and sorry, this is non-negotiable. There's no remote work. If you only want remote work, sorry, this is just, it's not going to work. But if there's any chance that it could be a fully remote job and that's what you're looking for, then you have the clout to sort of force it. That would be my approach. That's what's in your best interest. It's not in the interest of the employer for you to do that, but I think it works out better for you.
Yes. And I think we also have to be flexible as employees. And so even though I might only want exclusive remote jobs, I might not find a job that is exclusively remote that truly fits my best fit of a company and role. So maybe I find one that, like you said, Bill, doesn't explicitly state that it's remote or in office. And then we start to have those conversations during the interview process. And while I definitely prefer remote work, and I probably will never work an in-office 100% job ever again, I also want to have that flexibility because there might be times that I need to go into the office for certain things, or just there are always those kind of exceptions that might come up where if you completely have no flexibility, then that could be one of those red flags for the employer and the hiring team.
Yeah, I agree. You're right. If they're going to make you an offer you can't refuse, at least if you get an offer and it's at the offer stage that you really decide I'm going to put my foot down or not, you will at least see what they're offering you. And then you can make a more informed decision. And like Abby says, maybe you might be a bit more flexible than you think, considering what the compensation package is, right? I mean, so it's good to have all those facts in front of you, and then you can make a decision. And maybe, who knows, maybe you are a little bit more flexible than you think, depending on the details involved.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just looking at the chat here, and this is Luigi. It says, I'm actually kind of nervous. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was very confident for my recruiter interview because of watching Bill's video. In regard to the hiring managers, I'm kind of nervous. I think, I don't know about you guys. I mean, like, Abby is a recruiter. You're a recruiter. So I'm sure, you wouldn't say to people like, oh, talking to a recruiter, you're going to get more nervous than talking to a hiring manager. I put like no offense to recruiters, but I would enjoy speaking to a hiring manager more, simply because they can speak more freely. They have more in-depth knowledge of the role, this kind of thing. But then again, I've met a couple of really officious, rude hiring managers that say really blunt, inappropriate things, and maybe a recruiter would be more on their best behavior, more formal. But I mean, what's your take?
Typically between like a recruiter versus a hiring manager, the recruiter, if they're not an expert in the field and they're not a technical recruiter, they probably are doing more of a generic general culture fit interview. They want to make sure you have the minimum qualifications, maybe identify what preferred qualifications you have to meet the role. And then they'll probably just do some like basic behavior-based or situation-based questions to just get a feel for if they think you're going to be a good culture fit for the team, the department, the company, etc. Then when you move forward to the hiring manager process, that's going to be a little bit more specific to the job that you're applying to. So Luigi, what I would recommend doing is actually use ChatGPT to help generate some potential interview questions. Take the job posting that you applied to, paste it into ChatGPT, and ask it to generate, based on the job posting that I submit below, please generate 10 behavioral-based interview questions, 10 situational-based interview questions, and 10 technical interview questions. And it will analyze the job posting, and it will pop out those 30 different questions that you can then use to prepare for your interview. Always remember to prepare the introduction question. So tell me about yourself, and then always prepare questions for the end of the interview. You don't want to end your interview with, nope, I got no questions. You always can ask additional questions. And my biggest piece of advice when it comes to asking those questions is to get the interviewer talking about themselves. There's some psychological research out there that shows that when the interviewer does more talking, they actually feel the interview goes better. So if you can have some questions for them, like, what's your favorite part about working for this organization? What role are you playing in this hiring process? Am I going to work for you directly? Trying to figure out some of those things. Getting the person to talk about themselves is always a great strategy, even if you have no questions about the specific role.
Yeah, a great way to do that is to, when they ask you, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions, and you're going to give an answer, whatever the question is. When you're answering, you have the opportunity to tack on a question back to them at the end. So in maybe a simplest example would be, if they say like, what are your weaknesses, or, something, you say, oh, well, you answer the question, you say, here's, what I think my weakness is, is that kind of in line with what you were expecting, or something like that, or does that sound fair to you, or something like that. And then they say something, and then you maybe start to get a conversation, you respond to that, right? If you're talking to a hiring manager, I think that what really is paramount is whether they like you. Like a recruiter, maybe less so. A recruiter is looking for the technical things on your resume, and they want to see technical things in your answers. But like a hiring manager, you see, if you get the job, they're going to be your boss. So you could be technically perfect. You could be like a genius. But if you're off-putting, if you have bad communication skills, if you guys just don't click at all, that's going to be an issue for them. They're going to have problems dealing with you on a day-to-day basis. So if you show up there and you're in a great mood, or at least you come across like you're in a great mood, and you're like, hey, how's it going? And you guys get along. They ask you questions, you give answers, and you have a conversation, and you keep it light, and it's friendly and this kind of thing. They think, okay, that's what it's going to be like with you working here. When you're on the job, you're going to be like this. Okay. Now, if you're kind of really nervous and you're hesitant and it's just very awkward and, they're thinking like, okay, if I hire this person, every day is going to be like that when I deal with them. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter. I mean, Abby is probably going to cringe at this, but I'd say it doesn't matter exactly what you say in response to questions if you guys have a rapport, like if you get along and, this kind of thing. I mean,
yeah, I actually could not agree more. I think that creating a relationship with the person that you're interviewing with is like the number one thing to interview success. If even though I'm answering the questions perfectly, if I have no affect, so I'm like just resting face, and I am, monotone, and even though I'm like answering everything right, the interviewer is going to feel very little connection with me and is going to say, no, this person is not a good fit for the role. So even though I might be able to do the job very well, another huge aspect of work is working with other people. And if the interviewer doesn't feel like you can connect with them, they're probably going to be concerned that you won't be able to connect with other people in the organization or clients, etc.
Yeah. Now, I know I agree with Abby. A way of thinking about it is, I know this is a very tall order for some people, but what I would say is you go in there, you do this job interview, or like this is a video interview you're saying, I think, right? Yeah, Luigi is doing a video interview. So you talk to these people. The goal should be at the end of the interview, after everyone turns off their cameras and the call is over, the goal for you should be for them to think like, wow, that was easy and that was fun. I enjoyed talking to that person. Yeah. That should be the goal, right? It shouldn't be like when the call ends, they think, oh, phew, glad that was over. That was painful, and that went on forever.
That was uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, this is the stuff that matters, especially when talking to a hiring manager, right? Like, so yeah, we got Wenyi, who says, hi, Bill/Abby. Is it generally okay to ask for 2 weeks to consider an offer? I have a potentially more desirable full remote offer coming up soon. This is in the USA. Would you like to take that, Abby?
Yes. And I would say no, do not do this. And personal experience as a recruiter and hiring manager, we had someone that we actually offered a job to, and they told us that they would like, over a week because they were also interviewing with other companies. They let us know that they were interviewing with other companies, and that quickly told us that they were not fully invested in us as an organization. So we then continued the interview process. We found someone else who we wanted to hire. We rescinded the offer to the other person and extended the offer to the new person. And then the person that we rescinded the offer from was like, wait, I actually do want the job. And we were like, sorry, it's too late. Like, we've already offered it to this person. We've already rescinded it. And so I would say that you can maybe negotiate the current offer and see if you're able to get it to a place that feels just as desirable as the potential one. What's scary is I think you could ask for a couple of days to consider the offer, a day, 2 business days, things like that. 2 weeks is much too long. They're probably looking to start this hiring process sooner rather than later. So I think it's okay to ask for more time to consider the offer and then give them, your offer essentially. And what you could do is, even though you haven't received an official offer from this new, potentially more desirable organization or role, is you could say, I've got this other company that's offered me this. Do you think you could make this fully remote? Do you think you could increase the salary? Like, what are some of the other things that you could negotiate? But just asking for 2 weeks to consider an offer, they will definitely clue in that there's probably something else going on, and they may continue the interview process and then decide to rescind the offer they've submitted to you.
Yeah, I agree. That's too long. I would say 2 days or 2 business days or 2 days would be the limit to consider an offer. Like, unless you're talking executive level, maybe 4 days, but, like, that's anything more signals that you're not interested or there's some issue.
Yep.
And that's the kiss of death. If, because when they give an offer to somebody, and I mean, Abby would know this, you do this, when you give an offer to someone, you want to feel like that person feels like this offer is the most important thing for them. There's nothing else that they would rather do. It's not like there's other competing things. So anything less than like total enthusiasm and agreement is going to be a real red flag.
Yes.
Yeah.
They want someone to be as excited about working for them as they are about hiring them.
Yeah.
So it's got to be this like mutual, enthusiastic kind of experience. And when it comes to like the desirability of the offer that they've currently sent to you, that might just be the decision maker for you. The kind of risk that you run is that this potentially more desirable offer coming up soon is exactly that. It's potential. So it might not even come through. They might decide to move forward with someone else, and then you're potentially out of 2 jobs. So I'm not saying you should take this one that's already been offered to you, but I think you should definitely enter the negotiation process and see if they're willing to be a little bit more flexible, or what they're willing to offer that could match this potentially more desirable position.
It should be like the Care Bears, like Cheer Bear, like explosion of rainbows and hearts, and like that's what they're expecting. Anything less than that, and there's issues. So here's what I'm saying, because you have a dilemma. You've stated like you think there's another offer coming. If I were in your position, like not knowing any of the details of this, I would take this offer. I would say yes, and agree to like assuming what they're giving you is competitive, it's kind of in line with what you're wanting. I would agree to it. Or if it's kind of not that great, you're really not enthusiastic about it, maybe you could try and negotiate and say like, okay, I'll tell you what, make it a remote job, or make like 2 days a week remote. You got a deal, something like that. And I'd just take it. I would start it. And then if this second job materializes, if you do get an offer in a couple of weeks, you see what the offer is, you decide which one of these you'd rather do. And then you have the option of telling the first job, sorry, I can't accept the offer after all, so goodbye. And then you accept the second offer. You know what I mean? Like you keep your options open, and first come, first serve. So don't decline an offer if you think one might be coming. Like, was it, one the bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, right? Yeah. That's what I would do. You got to look out for yourself, okay? But what Abby said is absolutely true. Like, anything less than 100% enthusiasm, they will not like at all, and they will, most likely cause them to rescind the offer.
And I think that that's a really important point, is that I think at any organization that would be listening to this would be cringing and saying, no, never do that. Like, we don't want someone to, but this could happen to you at any time. Most states in the United States are considered like a right to work state, or at will employment. And they could easily fire you or lay you off with no warning. And so while I'm not saying that for every single job, you should always just accept the first one and then immediately drop them when another better offer comes through, like that's not what I think is being said, but you need to look out for you. And so you have this potential offer that may be better than your current situation. And and when I say potential offer, current offer, and then you even have this like better, more desirable offer that could happen. And so companies, while they won't love it when you say, you know what, I've thought about it, or I had a different offer come in and they were able to offer me X, Y, and Z. So I've decided to, rescind my acceptance of your offer. They will be disappointed, but it's not going to be the end of the world for them. Yeah,
you got to look out for number one, like Abby says. There's a song from my hometown in Canada called "Look Out for Number One." I think it was Randy Bat. The Guess Who. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Guess Who anymore. They're a rock band from Winnipeg, Canada, where I am. It's like the 400-pound guy, like with a beard, like singing this song, but did not look like Santa. He had a guitar in his hand. Anyway, you got to look out for yourself. Look out for what's best for you. So take whatever offer comes your way, and then if you have to turn around and say no, oh well. You know what I mean? That's just how it goes.
And they might do that to you. They might offer you something, but it might be a contingent offer based off of reference checks and backgrounds. And you think you've got the job, but until you start on day one, it's not officially your job.
Twist. Yeah, exactly. You think you got the job. And then they pull a fast one. David Tran says, I got ghosted by a company in which they asked when I could start. And this chat is hard to read. When I could start, and to stay tuned for next steps. Thoughts on this?
Yeah, so it sounds like the organization offered, or basically said that they asked when this person could start, and to stay tuned for next steps. They'd be in touch, and then didn't follow up on that. So in this case, my question is, did you follow up? I think that in most organizations, or when it comes to like interacting with recruiters, 3 times, if you follow up 3 times and you get no response or anything like that, then it's kind of your signal that they're no longer interested and you move on. And so I recommend following up. If they say stay tuned for next steps, I'd then respond to that email and say, great, when do you think I can expect your next steps? They might tell me a couple of business days. Once a couple of business days go past, then I might send another follow-up email. Hey, you said to keep an eye out, stay tuned for next steps. I haven't seen that come across my computer yet. Would you mind, giving me an update on what the process looks like? And then if there's no response to that, I would send one final email, so that third one, and say, hey, I just wanted to follow up on this. I'm really excited about this potential opportunity. Wanted to check in, see if you have any updates for me on the next steps. Leave it at that. If they don't respond to that, then I think you've officially been ghosted and you move on. They may come out of the woodwork suddenly and say, hey, here's those next steps. And you've already moved on. And that's actually, again, looking out for number one, what I would recommend doing.
Yeah, I agree. Every part of this process, you got to look out for yourself. And ghosting is just another example of that. So if they want to talk to you and they contact you, great. If they drop off the face of the planet, oh well, you're moving onward with other opportunities at any given time.
And David followed up in the chat, said they followed up last week via email. They said they were going to regroup with the hiring manager last Monday and then met with them already. So what I would recommend doing is sending another follow-up, since it's been allegedly a week since they said they were going to meet with the hiring manager, and mention that. Hi, I just wanted to follow up. You mentioned that you would be meeting with the hiring manager last Monday. It's been a full business week, and I just wanted to check in to see if there's any progress on this job or on the hiring process, and see where they go from there.
I've just discovered I can do this, so I'm going to do this. So Luigi says, thank you, I appreciate the advice. Does a hiring manager normally ask the behavioral questions, or should I assume they will? Yeah, they do. I mean, everyone does. Recruiter does, hiring manager does. They may, but it's not necessarily. It depends. It depends on the individual. We see hiring managers, they're not trained in HR necessarily, so they may choose to behave like a recruiter and ask the same type of things, or they might just be a dude or a gal, that just wants to have a conversation with you, and they might ask you crazy off the wall stuff, or not, or conform to this stuff. So there's really no rules when hiring managers are concerned.
And I would say it's a best practice of interviewing to ask behavior-based questions, because past behavior or past performance kind of gives you insight into future behavior and future performance. And that there's also no like right or wrong answer. And so I would say the majority of interview questions in an interview will be behavior-based. There might be some technical-based questions where they ask you like about a specific software or how you might solve this specific program. But in most cases, they're going to be behavior-based questions. So I would definitely prepare for those behavior-based questions. There may also be some technical questions that could come up related to the specific job that you're applying to, but always have, like 5 to 10 core stories prepared that give insight into how you handle situations and how you've handled them in the past.
Yeah, it makes sense. Let's see here. We got another one here. I'm a fresher. I have all the technical skills, but I'm struggling or even getting my first offer. Can you please give me some advice? If you're a fresher, you're probably up against the chicken and the egg problem, the catch-22 of no one will hire you without experience, but how can you get experience if no one will hire you, right? And something I've advocated for, the way to break that vicious cycle is networking. If 1,000 people apply for a job, but you're the only one that showed up in person, or you're the only one that reached out to someone in the organization, and did an information interview or something like that, or asked for a tour, this kind of thing, you have an advantage over every other candidate that applied. And that is that they know what you look like. They know what you're like in person. They know, like, presumably, how great your communication skills are, your enthusiasm for the role, how easy you are to talk to, how passionate you are for that type of work. And maybe if you did like a little tour or something, they can see your familiarity with different things, and by asking intelligent questions or this kind of stuff. So they already know much more about you, so you're much less of a risk than a complete stranger who's just like a resume in a pile, right? So if you had to hire one of these 1,000 people who would you hire? It would probably be the person who showed up and you've already met and you've already seen, wow, they're professional and they're easy to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
That can be the tiebreaker, right? So
Yes.
that's one way of doing it.
Well, and I found that most people who submit a lot of applications but get very little or zero offers for interviews next, the biggest reason why that's happening is they're not using a tailored resume. So you want to ensure that you have developed a resume that is tailored to the job that you're applying to. This doesn't mean that you need to rewrite your resume for every single job that you're going to apply to. You're just going to pull some keywords and phrases from the job posting that you're applying to and put it in your resume so that you can really make some connections between the experience and the skills that you have. And the experience could even be volunteer experience, working on group projects in your, undergrad or education experience, things like that. But you want to make direct connections between what you're bringing to the table and the job so that the person who's reviewing your application can say, okay, even though this person might not have 3 years of experience doing this specific work, they can still be, able to learn the job and do the job effectively. So definitely create a tailored resume. And then the other thing is if you're applying to jobs online, it can be really helpful to go to the actual careers page of that organization and apply directly there. Many people might use search engines like LinkedIn or Indeed or Monster, things like that, and just try to do a direct apply through that search engine. I would not recommend doing that. I would recommend putting in the additional effort, search the organization, find their careers page, and apply directly on their website. And then you can even dive a little bit deeper into trying to network with someone who is somewhat of a decision maker on that. So maybe you can figure out a contact in the HR department and they can put you in touch with the recruiter for the position or the hiring manager for the position. And then you can establish some rapport and kind of get your name and essentially face in front of them so that when your application does come through the process, they can identify that and kind of move it through, shortlist it, essentially move it to the top of the list.
I turned down my mic volume, so I don't know if that's any improvement. Somebody said my mic was crackling bad, so distorting, I imagine.
It sounds better. You're quieter, but I can still hear you. It's clearer.
Volume will come back. That's the thing about this. It adjusts everything for you. So I made the mistake of thinking it would just handle everything. It didn't. Let's see. Where are we here? What's this? They said they were going to regroup the hiring manager last Monday. Okay.
I see a question that says, what do you advise someone who is pregnant or gets pregnant after an interview? In the United States, at least, it is illegal to discriminate against people who are pregnant or become pregnant. And so while it might not be ideal for the organization to hire someone who then will go on maternity leave or paternity leave shortly after the hiring process, they cannot make hiring decisions based off of that exclusively. So I don't think that it's necessarily any of their business initially, but I think once you get into, deeper interview rounds or the offer phase, sharing that information is definitely going to be to your advantage, because if you show up on your first day and they're like, wait a second, we didn't realize that you were going to be unavailable for, in a month for all of this training, that kind of changes how we might have approached the hiring process, then there will be a disadvantage when it comes to the trust they feel towards you and vice versa. So I think you do want to be honest about it, during the hiring process. It's not the first thing that you're going to discuss. But
yeah, I wouldn't volunteer it unless they specifically ask. I wouldn't comment on it.
Yep.
Right? Is that what you would
Well, and
do?
I think the only time that you might comment on it is, if you're getting an offer and talking about what the next, what will my first 30, 60, and 90 days look like? That's like the first 3 months. And they say, well, we're expecting you to be in the field doing all of these things, and it really won't work out when it comes to your current status as a pregnant person. Then I think that's when you say, okay, well, and I am, expecting this. I would think this is still a really good fit. How does that filter into this? But I do think it's really none of their business until it's going to impact them.
Yeah, I would say cross that bridge when you come to, don't volunteer it. Don't volunteer anything that could eliminate you or be a complication or be a problem. Now, if they specifically ask, then yes, you disclose, right?
Yeah, which is why I think even discussing it in the offer process could be beneficial, because if they rescind the offer or choose not to move forward with you after they've already offered you a position and you've disclosed the pregnancy, then you definitely have an EOC complaint. I would say it would be a valid complaint where they have retaliated against you for your status as someone who is pregnant.
Makes sense. I agree. What do we got here? Destiny says, I recently started the job in August, but I saw a great opportunity a few weeks ago that will increase my salary a fair amount. And now I have an interview tomorrow. Now, this is for the second job. Should I be concerned for the current job? No. Well, listen, I don't know the details, but all things being equal, don't inform your current job that you are taking interviews for possibly another job, right? Hopefully, right? Keep it all on the DL and don't tell anyone. And should the second job opportunity work out and you get an offer in your hand and it's approved, then only then would you inform your existing employer that, you're probably leaving, right?
And we've already mentioned this a couple of times in our discussion today. Like, you have to look out for you. And so if you choose not to apply an interview for a job that's just as good of a fit for you, that also has a higher salary rate and could essentially offer you better life work balance, and you choose not to do that because of this like perceived loyalty to an organization, that will end up probably harming you in the long run. You don't know what's going to happen with this potential job that you're interviewing for. They might choose not to move forward with you. And so being concerned for your current job is not something that I would be worried about. And then also only focusing on your current job and not really looking outside for those improvement opportunities is also not going to help you.
See, here's something that I haven't heard many people talk about. If you are between jobs, you're unemployed and somebody offers you a job for, I don't know, $80,000, whatever. Okay, so you would accept that and it's worth $80,000. Okay. Scenario number 2, you are currently employed at a job that's paying you, say, $75,000 and you get this same offer for another job opportunity for $80,000. Okay. Now, the difference is that if you take this job now, you're giving up a job that pays you $75,000 a year. You've started that job. So you know that at least, the job wasn't a hoax or, anything like that. It's a legitimate job and maybe it's even going well. You know what I mean? So the point I'm trying to make is that there's some risk for you if you then step from the $75,000 job to the $80,000 job, right? So in order to make that worthwhile for yourself, the $80,000 job, like right now, it's a $5,000 premium, right? So this risk you're taking, you're jumping into the unknown. It could be a terrible job. The $80,000 a year job could be like they changed the duties on you. Your boss is a psychopath. Like you don't know what you're stepping into. Okay. It could be way worse than what you've got now. So you need to be compensated for that risk. So if you've got a job offer for 80,000 and you're currently working for 75, this is maybe an opportunity for you to do some hard negotiation and say like, look, I'll tell you what, you pay me 85, you give me 2 days a week remote and you give me these benefits and, we got a deal kind of thing. Because you see, I've got something right now that's the compensation package is almost the same as this and it's in the bag for me. So, you know what I mean? I have to be compensated for the risk in leaving that, not to mention the harm it might do my career and potentially bad references, et cetera, to step over here to do this. So, this allows you to be able to try to do some of that hard negotiating. And if it doesn't work out, hey, you've already got something that's working out really well, So what have you got to lose in a sense, right? So remember, you don't just have to accept it at face value. So that's the other aspect here.
Well, and I think even that brings up the point of negotiating with your current employer. Even though you have accepted an offer and you're employed at a current rate, the price, like the actual cost of replacing you through a whole new recruitment and job search process is about 3 times the salary that you're making. And so it's not really worth it for them to just let you go. So if you like the current job and if you could see yourself being happy there and the salary increase seems reasonable for, the job that you're currently interviewing for versus the job that you're currently in, if you get the offer from the new job, you could even use that to kind of reverse negotiate at your current position. Say, I've really been enjoying this job. I think that I love the tasks. I love the work. I love the people, all the enthusiastic things and positive things you can say. And I've, kept some options open and I've received a job offer that is going to offer me this. I would love to stay here. Do you think that we could actually adjust the agreement that we have to match this other offer? Or,
Yeah. I got
can you
this
do better?
offer. Can you match it? Yeah, exactly. Oh, and don't show them the offer.
Yes.
If it's a legitimate offer, that's all you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to know that. They don't need to see evidence of that. They don't need to know anything about it. They don't need to know where it is or what department it's in or what role it is. You just tell them, this is what I got. Can you match it? Now, if they don't believe you or they say no, then you jump.
Yep.
Right? If they're willing to match it, like Abby says, it may make sense for them to just say, okay, we will. Now, it may not be possible if you're at the maximum, range within your pay grade or, whatever. It may not be possible if you would be getting paid more than your boss or, something, right? It may not always be possible, but at least you're pushing for it. Right.
Yeah.
And then you get something that you already know, right? The less risk for you and you get the compensation. So it's a win-win.
And there's always going to be risk with change. So that's the one thing that we have to accept as humans, is that this change, there's just risks associated with it. And so I think there's also this inherent sense of fear that comes from being fully transparent with people. So I'm scared that I could lose my job if I tell them that I'm looking for other jobs or that I've got an offer. At the same time, if I end up getting fired or let go because I let them know that I had this other offer come through, that might actually be better for me in the long term, because it's showing me that they don't truly appreciate the work that I'm doing and I'm not super valuable for them. And so there are some things that could happen that are actually better for you in the long run. And so kind of living and making choices and decisions based off of fear of what if is actually going to hold you back. So I think even though you started a job in August, if you feel like it's a great fit for you and they really like you and you've had a great relationship with your supervisor and your coworkers, this is maybe an opportunity to negotiate at your current role so that you can stay there and still get better benefits. Or if you think that it's an even better opportunity, that's a better culture fit and better, fit for you as just a person, higher rate of pay, better PTO policies, all of those things, then you can even use your current job to kind of leverage the offer that you might be getting from this new job.
Yeah, exactly. It's about risk and return. Talk to a finance person about that. It's about managing your risk. When there's change, there's risk, right? Hug a finance person today. That's the theme.
Mm-hmm.
Betsy says, what do you do to boost your career after a personal break? You want to take that one, Abby?
Yeah, well, and I'm posting in the chat the link to our live stream from earlier this month where we talked with Amory about how to move into the job search process after you've been unemployed for a few months or you've taken just the choice to be unemployed for a while. And so when it comes to boost your career after a personal break, it really comes down to, I think, overcoming your kind of internal barriers that might hold you back from not being good enough. And so update your resume, start having conversations with people, use your network. The 6 degrees of separation is like a legit thing. So find people who know someone and just start practicing interviewing. I would recommend that after you've taken a personal break, the hardest part is answering questions about that break. Sometimes they come up, sometimes they don't, but you've got to be ready to kind of address why you took that break. So I'd recommend that if you are even struggling with that, find a career coach somewhere who can kind of talk through your past and why you chose to take a break and how that has influenced and what you've learned and how you've grown and developed yourself during that break and how that's going to set you up for this new position that you're applying to. If you're in the United States, there's lots of free resources through our workforce centers. I believe it's a county-wide thing, so it's funded from the federal government. There are workforce centers, at least all over the state of Colorado. I know they're in various states as well. And they have paid career coaches on staff to help provide this free resource to job seekers and people who have taken breaks and things like that. So I'd recommend doing that. Or you can talk with a career coach, individually that you hire who can help you through that process as well.
Yeah, and as Abby says, check out our previous live stream where we talked all about that for like an hour or an hour and a half or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, I think that's probably good. I think we've reached to the end of the questions for today. That's probably
Yeah.
good to cap it at about an hour. I see there's 40 people here. So thank you for joining us. If you're joining us, this is going out live on Abby's channel, on my channel. Subscribe to both of us and check out Abby's channel. She's got a lot of videos on a lot of different job interview stuff. So if you're dealing with a recruiter, she's definitely a source of information on what's going on the other side of the table, how people are reacting to the various things you say, what to say and why, all this kind of stuff. So check that out. I've got some stuff on my channel, and we do this live stream most Mondays. We are going to be back next Monday. It's going to be the two of us plus Amri from Life, not Life Work Balance, from I forget her name, like personal coach Amri Celeste. There is a link to all of our channels in the description box, so check that out. And yeah, we had other articles we were going to go through, but nothing really earth shattering. I like the format of actually answering questions as we go.
Me too.
That really, I think it makes more sense for it to all be live when we're doing this, So
Yes. Yeah. And we
That's
had
great.
like 4 different topics that we had prepared just in case. We had like
Yeah.
not a lot of chat interaction, but I prefer the chat interaction for
But
sure.
you guys came through and gave us some real good material to work
Yes.
from. So that's great. So thank you to everybody who participated in the comments. We will see you soon. We will see you in 1 week. Until then, we wish you nothing but the best. Everybody take care.
Bye, everyone.